Oh, let me turn it around. Hey, guys. Hey. All right. Well, this is Miss Betterton. I'm back, and I bet you've been wondering, where is that woman? Maybe not, because I've noticed, I think, it seems like from all the social media that a lot of my bullfrogs are out on vacation trying to soak up the sun for the last few weeks of summer. So, it seems like not as many of you are maybe getting to read along. That makes me sad, but I know that you can always catch up, so no big deal. And I myself have had a few days off. My sisters and my hair's flying away. My sisters and my nieces came, and we had a girls' weekend, kind of just fun swimming and playing games and talking and staying up way too late. So, anyway, all our bedrooms were taken up, and I couldn't just find a place to get off by myself. And I just really wanted to enjoy my time with them. So, I wanted to apologize for not getting to finish our book, Soccer on Sunday. Did y'all watch the real World Cup, the current World Cup? The final, I think, was Sunday, I think it was. And I didn't watch it, but I saw the ending of it, and I saw that France and, was it Botswana? I don't know. But anyway, France won. And it was really cool to watch them. I was actually eating lunch with my son Jeffrey and his wife Tristan at a really cool place called The Shed in Salado. And there was a TV right above our table. And so we could watch them, and they were running, and uh, they were sliding through the rain and so excited. They were acting like little kids um, because they were so excited that they won. And so, anyway, it was really cool to see that and know that we're almost through with our book. Okay, so I'm going to read right now. I'm going to read chapters 8, 9, and 10 because I think there's only 10. And that will complete our book. Now, I told you, I think I've decided to read for our next book the baseball one, just to kind of stay with the sports theme. That's fun because girls and boys both like sports and play sports. So this one will be the next one. So if you don't have book number 29, you can go and try to order it or check it out at the library. It's called A Big Day for Baseball. A Big Day for Baseball. And it's play ball Jackie Robinson. This is one of the first African Americans to play baseball, I believe. And so, and it's also, look, it's a New York Times best-selling series. So, anyway, it looks like a good next book to go to. And also, as always, there's always a fact tracker that has more information about Jackie Robinson. Remember, that's what I love, love, love about Mary Pope Osborne, is she has given me a love and appreciation for history and historical things that happen and people in history. And so I just love that she teaches us, not just entertains us. She does both. She entertains and teaches us. So that will be the next chapter book that we do after I finish this one. And I also have a huge stack. I just want to show you real quick. I have a huge stack of some picture books, some of my favorites, some that I've never actually read, some new ones. So I have a big old stack of picture books that I'm going to record myself reading, and then you can read along if you just feel like, listening to a book before you take a good old nap. Do y'all love summer naps like I do? Ooh, I love summer naps. Or if you just want to listen to a book before you go to bed at night and your parents are busy or they're not there, you could always pop on and listen to one of the picture books. So I'm going to be recording myself reading all of those picture books, possibly some today and tomorrow. And then we have more family coming in. I love it because one of my very dear friends is getting married Saturday. And so Jacob, my other son, Jacob, and his wife, Lexi, are going to be here. And so I'm just going to try to pre-read and pre-record as much as I can so that we don't get behind. Also, next week, if you have not signed up for summer camp, there's an awesome summer camp that I and Mrs. Holden are doing. I don't know if it's full. It might be full. But it's a Disney Princess summer camp. But I'm sure there's lots of other camps that are still have openings. And so if Parents, if you're bored and you want your kids are bored and you want to get them out of the house and let them do some fun things, I think they're usually 9 to 2 o'clock at one of the elementary schools. You can go on the Allen website and check that out. But lots and lots of fun. So, all right, so here we go. Chapter 8, Game of a Lifetime. And remember, they had just gotten off the subway or something they were riding, and they were asked to play soccer with Roberto's friends. And they were like, we don't really want Roberto because he's not that great. And Jack and Annie were like, well, we're not that great either, but we're not going to play unless you let Roberto play. And then they decided, you know what, we'll put that mist on us and we will be awesome soccer players. So let's see what happens. And I want you to think, what would you, if you could use the mist to be a perfection of whatever you want to do, what is it that you would want to do? Like, would you want to be a chef? Would you want to do something athletic? Would you want to be an artist? Would you want to be the smartest person in the world? Remember, it's only for an hour. But man, wouldn't that be so fun to see what it feels like to be perfect, to do amazing at something just for an hour? That'd be so cool. Okay, here we go. Game of a lifetime. Seriously, said Jack. Yes, said Annie. But what about our mission? Getting into the banquet, meeting the players, said Jack. Right now, this seems more important, don't you think? Said Annie. Jack looked at Roberto's sad face. He thought about the boy's kindness and his happy excitement at the stadium. Yeah, he said. Yeah, it does. He turned and yelled at Miguel. We'll play, but all of us or none of us. Oh, okay, Miguel said reluctantly. Roberto shook his head. No, Jack, no, he said. Diego's players laughed. You'll lose now for sure, Miguel. One of them yelled, big time. Give us a minute, Jack said to the soccer players, and he huddled with Annie and Roberto. Jack, they're right. I'm not a good player, said Roberto. Me neither, said Jack, but together we will make a beautiful team, I promise. Listen, Roberto, said Annie, we'll use magic from Merlin, the magician of Camelot, and make a wish. To play like Pele, finished Jack. Magic, said Roberto. Yes, mist gathered at first light on the first day of the new moon on the Isle of Avalon, Annie said. Roberto shrugged. Okay, he said. Are you guys playing or not? Miguel shouted. We're playing, Jack yelled over his shoulder. He pulled the cork from the bottle and breathed in Merlin's magic mist. He smelled oranges and cinnamon and cedar. I wish to play like Pele, he whispered. Jack gave the tiny bottle to Annie. She breathed in the mist and said, I wish to play like Pele. Annie gave the bottle to Roberto, and he breathed in the magic mist. Then he exclaimed with great enthusiasm, I wish to play like Pele. Come on, Miguel shouted from the soccer field. We're coming, 1 sec, said Jack. He put Merlin's magic mist away and glanced at his watch. It's 3:15 now. We have 1 hour of magic. At 4:15, the magic ends. Let's go. Jack confidently led Annie and Roberto toward the soccer game. When they got to the edge of the field, Jack stopped. Off with the shoes, he said cheerfully. The three of them slipped off their shoes and socks to be like the other kids. Jack left his backpack next to his shoes. Then he clapped his hands. Okay, he said, let's play ball. As Jack, Annie, and Roberto walked onto the field, mud oozed between their toes. The rain had stopped, but the ground was soaked. They took forward positions on Miguel's team. We're ahead by 2 goals, said Miguel. Don't blow it, okay? Jack smiled and nodded. Buzzing with excitement, he was eager to play. The referee placed the soccer ball in the center of the muddy field. A kicker and another teammate from Diego's team stood near the ball. On the other side of the center line, the opposite team glared at the 3 forwards. But Jack wasn't worried. He grinned back at them, eager for the game to start. The referee on the dusty sideline blew a whistle, and the second half of the match began. The kicker on Diego's team tapped the ball to her teammate, who passed it to Diego. As Diego and some other teammates knocked the ball around, Jack noticed that they were really good soccer players. But then suddenly, Annie slipped in and stole the ball from them. She whacked it with her instep, passing it to Jack, who slid it to Roberto. Roberto began moving the ball down the field. As Diego's defenders moved in, Roberto changed pace from slow to fast, slow to fast. The ball seemed glued to his feet until he fired a shot and drove it like a missile into the net. "Score!" shouted the referee. "Goal!" Jack and Annie and Roberto shouted, pumping the air with their fists. All the other players gasped in amazement. "Who are you guys?" Carla shouted. The goalie kicked the ball back into play. Carla passed it to a girl who tried to pass it to a boy, but like lightning, Jack moved in and shot the ball through the air to Roberto. Roberto used his thigh to pop the ball to Annie. Annie stopped the ball with her foot and dribbled it past two defenders down the field, then passed it to Jack. Jack moved the ball backward, forward, and sideways with short taps of his feet. He had never had so much fun in his life. He felt as if his feet could do anything. He saw Roberto across the field and kicked the ball to him, passing it over the heads of the defenders. Roberto gave the ball a leaping header, sending it to Annie. Annie trapped the ball on the ground, then ran with it, keeping it close. She faked a move one way, then another, then kicked the ball backward to Roberto. Roberto delivered another perfect shot into the net. "Score! Goal!" Jack, Annie, and Roberto shouted, pumping the air with their fist. The goalie kicked the ball back into play. The opposing side started the ball down the muddy field, but Jack moved faster. He intercepted it and passed it to Annie. Annie sent the ball back to Roberto, who scooped his foot under the ball and popped it over a group of players right to Jack. Jack out-jumped two defenders and hit the ball with his chest, sending it down the field. Roberto sped after the ball, stole it from two players, and gave it a swift kick right into the net. "Goal!" Jack, Annie, and Roberto shouted, pumping the air with their fists. "Goal!" echoed the kids on Miguel's team and Diego's team. All the players seemed to be enjoying the work of the beautiful team of Jack, Annie, and Roberto. As the game went on, everyone was playing really well, but Diego's players were no match for Jack, Annie, and Roberto. The three of them were like a goal-scoring machine. Hearing the shouting and cheering from the soccer game, people left their porches and yards and hurried over to see the match. The spectators watched Jack, Annie, and Roberto move like dancers, making low free kicks, long range kicks, and leaping headers. They watched them hit the ball with their right and left feet, their foreheads and their chests, stomachs, and thighs. They watched them dribble the ball down the field by tapping it with both feet and send knuckleballs zigzagging across the dirt into the net. In the final seconds of the game, everyone watched Jack execute a perfect bicycle kick. Now, I don't know if you're a soccer player. I'm not. I've never played soccer. My kids only tried it for maybe a year or two. So don't really know all these terms, but I'm going to show you this picture. It's really cool. That, my friends, is a bicycle kick. See how it looks like his legs are on a bicycle? And see the mud on his feet? Because they're playing without shoes. Okay, so in the final seconds of the game, everyone watched Jack execute a perfect bicycle kick. Like an acrobat, he threw his legs up in the air and kicked an overhead ball to Annie, who sent it on to Roberto, who shot it past the goalie into the net. Score! All the spectators, all the players, and even the referee pumped their fist in the air and screamed, "Goal!" So everybody was enjoying watching them. There's Roberto. There's Annie, I believe. Then the referee blew the final whistle. "Game over," he shouted. There was a huge roar from the spectators. "What's the score?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Who cares?" said the referee. "That was amazing." All the players from both teams had big smiles on their wet, dirty faces. They were slapping each other on the back, Miguel and Diego picked up Roberto and carried him on their shoulders. Other players gathered around Jack and Annie, asking for their autographs. A teenager took pictures of them with her instant camera. An old man shook their hand, saying, "You three are the beautiful team." In the middle of the noisy celebration, Annie shouted to Jack, "What time is it?" 5 minutes to 4, he said, glancing at his watch. "We'd better go. Remember Coney Island and Thebes," said Annie. "Oh, yeah, definitely," said Jack. On their last two missions, they found themselves in big trouble when their magic hour of greatness had ended. Jack and Annie turned to Roberto, who was now holding a toddler posing for the camera. After the picture was taken, Jack leaned close and said, "We have to leave fast before the magic wears off and we turn into our regular selves." "Okay," said Roberto. He gave the child back to her mother. "Let's go to the city, but I warn you, they will all follow us." "Then let's go while we're still great athletes and runners," said Annie. The three of them turned back to the crowd and waved, "Bye." Jack, Annie, and Roberto said, backing up. Everyone shouted at once, "No, wait, don't go, stay, stay." "Sorry, but we have to go," said Annie. "Thank you so much for letting us play." Jack grabbed his backpack. All three grabbed their shoes and socks. "Run!" yelled Roberto. And then they took off running away from the soccer field. Kids from both teams ran after them. The kids were all shouting, "Stop! Come back! Join our team! Join our team!" But the beautiful team kept running. Using their magic skills, they jumped barefoot over a crumbling stone wall and leapfrogged over a row of garbage cans. "Wait! Don't leave us!" the soccer kids kept chasing after them. "This way," Roberto led Jack and Annie down an alley and out to a dirt road. The three of them ran between rows of cinder block buildings. They zipped around a maze of sheets and towels hanging on clotheslines. They jumped over potholes and smelly garbage. As they kept running and leaping, Jack felt as if he were flying. He felt agile and light-footed. Then suddenly, Jack felt heavy and clumsy, out of breath. He slowed down and came to a stop. Annie and Roberto did the same. Covered with mud, the three of them collapsed onto the ground. I can't run anymore," Jack said. "Me either." "Me neither," said Annie. "I'm dead," said Roberto. Jack looked at his watch. 17 minutes after 4, he said breathlessly. "Our magic hour is over." That's sad. All right, so chapter 9 is called Go! "So now we can just be our old selves again," said Roberto, panting. There were no signs of the soccer kids. As Jack looked around, he saw a newspaper stand in an outdoor cafe. "Hey, are you guys as hungry and thirsty as I am?" he asked. "Yes," Annie and Roberto said together. Jack pulled some pesos out of his backpack. "How are we doing here?" he said. He showed his money to Roberto. "Do we have enough for tacos and bus fare too?" Roberto nodded, grinning. "Perfect," said Jack. "Let's grab a bite. Then Annie and I have to find a big banquet in the city." "Really? Do you not need to wash up first?" asked Roberto. "Oh, yeah." Jack sighed as he looked at his mud-splattered clothes. "Let's worry about that after we eat," said Annie. The three of them stood up and headed inside the cafe. A heavy-set woman with brown skin and gray hair was frying food behind the counter. A couple of teenagers were putting coins in a jukebox. Loud music started to play. "3 taco plates and 3 lemonades, please," Roberto said to the woman behind the counter. She nodded and put food onto 3 plates. Then she brought the plates to a table and set them down. Soon she delivered 3 tall glasses of pink lemonade. Jack, Annie, and Roberto dug hungrily into their food. Jack gobbled up tacos filled with tomatoes, chilies, and cheese. He ate a big serving of black beans and yellow rice and gulped down his lemonade. "Roberto, you scored lots of goals today," Annie said, her mouth full. "Yeah, your feet moved like lightning," said Jack. Roberto laughed. "You two made me look good," he said. "You passed the ball to me every chance you got." "That's called teamwork," said Annie. "Yes, it is," said Jack. "Someone called us the beautiful team." "Right," said Annie. She raised her arms above her head. "Yay, beautiful team!" she exclaimed. Roberto laughed. "You have a good enthusiasm for soccer, Jack and Annie," he said. "Enthusiasm is everything." Jack smiled. Right, and now I have enthusiasm for eating this food," he said. "Me too, it's so good," said Annie, taking another bite of rice and beans. "Hey, Jack, where did you get that ring?" asked Roberto. "It looks like it's on fire." "What?" said Jack and Annie together. They both looked at the ring on Jack's finger. It was flickering with light. "Oh man," whispered Jack. Annie's eyes grew huge. "What were we just talking about?" she asked. Good food," said Jack. "Jack's bicycle kick," said Roberto. "The beautiful team," said Annie. "Enthusiasm," said Roberto. "I said enthusiasm is everything." Suddenly, the ring exploded with light. "That's it," cried Jack. "Enthusiasm is everything," said Annie. "Roberto, I think you just said something amazing and true and great," said Jack. "But it wasn't me who first said it," said Roberto. "Pele said it." "Pele said that?" said Jack. "Yes, my father read it in the newspaper," said Roberto. "Pele said, when you play soccer, enthusiasm is everything." "Okay, that's it. We just accomplished our mission," said Annie. "We can go to Camelot now," said Jack. They both shot their arms in the air and shouted, "Go!" Here's a picture. So enthusiasm is everything. Is there great truth? "What mission? Where's Camelot?" asked Roberto. He looked confused. "It's a long story," said Jack. "Just know that you helped us discover a really important secret of greatness from Pele," said Annie. "Thank you." Roberto smiled. "You're welcome," he said. But then the smile left his face. "I am happy, but I am sad too," he said. "Why are you sad?" asked Annie. "Today was a magical day," said Roberto, "but it will never happen again. I will never be a great soccer player again." "Yes, you can be a great soccer player again," said Annie said. "You have lots of enthusiasm." "Well, that's all I have," said Roberto. "I'm clumsy. I don't run fast or kick well. Before today, I never scored even one goal." "Roberto, this is really important," said Annie. "If you want to be a great soccer player or great at anything," Jack broke in. "Right, if you want to be great at anything, there are 4 secrets you need to know," said Annie. "Right," said Jack. "First, you need to have humility. That means you have to be willing to learn from others." "Roberto has that," said Annie. "Absolutely you have that," Jack said to Roberto. "Second, being great takes hard work." "Do you work hard at practicing soccer?" Annie asked Roberto. "Well, no," said Roberto. "I don't either," said Jack. "Okay, so we should both start practicing more." "Third, you need to have meaning and purpose in your life," said Annie. Roberto frowned. "What does that mean?" he said. "That means you try to do something that's good for the world and not just yourself," said Annie. "Oh," said Roberto. "Well, soccer does that. It brings people together from different neighborhoods, and today it brought people together from all over the world in the stadium. And it brought the 3 of us together," said Annie. "Good," said Jack. "And finally, enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is something we know you have." "Yes," said Roberto, smiling again. He settled back in his seat. "So I know the thing I must do. I must start to practice very hard. My brothers and sisters will help me with that." Oh no," he jumped up from his chair. "What's wrong?" said Annie. "I must go now," Roberto said. "I forgot all about my family. Everyone will be waiting to hear my stories about the game." "Oh, right, we have to go too," said Jack, standing up with Annie. Jack looked at their bill and left a bunch of pesos on the table. Then they all headed out of the cafe. The rain had let up and there was a steamy mist in the air. "Where is the banquet you must find?" said Roberto. "Oh, we don't have to go there anymore," said Jack. "Our mission is done. We just need to get back to the U.S. Embassy." "No problem," said Roberto. "The bus goes to the Insurgentes station very near the embassy. We can all get off there and I'll catch the metro to my neighborhood. Come on." He led Jack and Annie across a vacant lot. Then they started up a dirt road lined with small stucco houses. "There it is! Run!" Roberto said. An old bus was rattling up the road. Jack and Annie ran with Roberto to the corner. Out of breath, they got to the bus stop just in time. The doors of the bus opened and the 3 of them hopped aboard. "Metro Insurgentes, please," Jack said to the driver. He paid for 3 fares. Then, even though there were plenty of seats, Jack, Annie, and Roberto squeezed into a 2-seater so they could all sit together. As the bus wound through the outskirts of Mexico City, Jack leaned his head against the window. Soon he closed his eyes. The next thing he knew, he was back in the game, kicking the ball forward, backward, and sideways, jumping into the air, lobbing the ball past defenders, past the goalie, and into the net. Jack held a trophy high above his head while the crowd roared. "Wake up, kids, we're here," announced the bus driver. Jack opened his eyes. The bus driver was standing over them. They'd all fallen asleep on the long ride back to the city. Annie gently shook Roberto's shoulder, waking him. He sat up straight. "It's our stop, Roberto," she said. Oh, he said. Jack, Annie, and Roberto scrambled out of their seats. They jumped off the bus and stood together on the plaza of Metro Insurgentes. "Do you know how to get to the embassy from here?" Roberto asked. "Sure, we've been there already," said Annie. "Good," said Roberto. He shook hands with Annie, then Jack. "Thank you, Annie and Jack," he said formally. "Thank you for everything." "Thank you for everything, Roberto," said Jack. "Happy birthday forever," said Annie. Roberto flashed his beautiful smile. He waved, and then he turned and hurried into the metro station. "What a great kid," said Jack. "Yeah, I wish he lived in Frog Creek," said Annie. "Me too," said Jack. "Well, ready?" "Yep," said Annie. Onward to Camelot. It was dark as Jack and Annie headed up Florencia Avenue. They passed the Angel and then ran down the street to the U.S. Embassy. The embassy grounds were quiet. There was no sign of a guard on duty. "I hope Benny got to see the game on TV," said Annie. "I would like to see that game someday," said Jack. "I'll bet there's a way to see it back home, on the computer or on a DVD. "Hey, you really couldn't see anything from Roberto's seat, could you?" said Annie. Jack shook his head. "You're a good person, Jack," said Annie. Before Jack could say he wasn't that good, Benny stepped out of the embassy. "Hi, y'all. Are you just getting back from the game?" he asked. "Yep," said Jack. "Did y'all have a good time?" asked Benny. "Yes," said Annie. "And you know what?" said Jack, thinking about running around the soccer field with Annie and Roberto. "It was the game of a lifetime." "It sure was. I got to see some of it on TV," said Benny. "I'm heading home right now. Night." "Good night," said Annie. She and Jack stood on the lawn of the embassy until Benny had disappeared down the city sidewalk. "Pronto," said Annie. Jack and Annie hurried to the rope ladder, hidden in the trees. They climbed up into the magic treehouse and looked out the window together. A fiery waterfall of green and yellow stars was bursting above the jagged skyline of Mexico City. With whistling and popping sounds, the fireworks were celebrating the game of a lifetime. "Goodbye, Mexico," said Jack. "Goodbye, Pele," said Annie. "Good luck, Roberto," said Jack. As the fireworks kept exploding, Jack pulled. Let me show you these pictures before I turn the page. So there's Mexico City. There's all the fireworks. And there's Jack and Annie in their magic tree house looking out. So as the fireworks kept exploding, Jack pulled out his pencil and notebook, knelt down on the floor, and added the fourth secret of greatness to their list: enthusiasm. He wrote it right there. "Good," said Annie. "Let's take our list to Camelot now." She picked up the scroll lying on the floor and pointed to the word Camelot in Merlin's note. "I wish we could go there," she whispered. A blast of light, a roar of wind, a rumble of thunder, and they were there. All right, so last chapter, chapter 10, is called Candles in the Forest. All right, so now they have the 4 truths, and they're going to go to Camelot. Golden light flooded the treehouse. Jack and Annie looked out the window. It was early evening. The magic treehouse had not landed in a tree. It had landed in a small clearing in a Camelot forest. All around, thousands of lanterns hung from oak trees. Their candle flames shone on knights in gleaming armor and ladies in cone-shaped hats with flowing veils. Jack couldn't speak. Even Annie was speechless. Morgan Le Fay stepped out from the crowd. The enchantress librarian was dressed in a long red velvet gown. Her white hair shimmered in the candlelight. "Welcome back, Jack and Annie," said Morgan. "Thank you," breathed Jack. "I'm sorry we're so dirty," said Annie. "We just played a tough game of soccer." "You look wonderful to us," said Morgan, smiling. "All of Camelot celebrates your return. 52 times you have traveled to faraway places in my magic treehouse. 52 times you have proven your courage and kindness under the most difficult of circumstances. It is a magical number, the same number as there are weeks in a year." Carrying his staff, Merlin the magician stepped forward and stood beside Morgan. "Jack and Annie, I heard stories of your adventures long before I met you," he said. "I could not believe two children would venture into the lands of dinosaurs, castles, ancient Egypt, and pirates and return unharmed. You even outsmarted me when you saved Morgan from a spell I had playfully put her under." Morgan gave Merlin a look. Then she turned back to Jack and Annie. "And we had fun, didn't we?" she said. "When we journeyed to the time of the ninjas, the rainforest, the ice age, and the moon." Yes, and Jack Yes, and Jack and I had fun when we solved your four riddles," Annie said breathlessly. "On the coral reef in the Wild West, on the Serengeti plain of Africa, and in the Arctic." "And when we became master librarians," said Jack, "we rescued the four ancient stories from Rome, China, Ireland, and Greece." "And when you freed me from a spell," said a voice from the crowd. "Woof, woof." "Teddy," said Annie. The firelight shone on the young sorcerer's tousled red hair as he stepped forward. "Remember when I was a dog?" Teddy said, grinning. Jack and Annie laughed and nodded. "And we escaped the Titanic," said Teddy, "and the buffalo stampede, the tiger in India, and the forest fire in the Australian outback." "Yes," said Jack and Annie, "and do not forget how you saved his Majesty from despair," said a woman in a snow-white gown. A veil hung from a wreath of blue flowers around her hair. Standing next to her was a man in a purple tunic and a red cape. On his head was a simple golden crown. "Queen Guinevere, King Arthur," said Annie. "You brought me wisdom and courage from the American Civil War," said King Arthur, "and the Revolutionary War, a schoolhouse on the American prairie, and an earthquake in San Francisco. And then you discovered the secrets of everyday magic," said Morgan, "from the people of the first Thanksgiving, the gorillas of the Cloud Forest, William Shakespeare, and friends in Hawaii. And you saved the four treasures of Camelot from Merlin," said King Arthur. Merlin laughed. "Yes, you outwitted the dragons of the other world, the Raven King and Sea Serpent, and the Ice Wizard," he said. "And do not forget when Teddy and I journeyed with you to the four beautiful cities," said a young girl. Her dark hair curled down over her shoulders. Her sea blue eyes shone in the firelight. "Ancient Baghdad, Venice, Paris, and New York," she said. Jack nodded. "Hi, Kathleen," he said shyly. "And thank you, Jack and Annie, for saving another from a spell too," said Kathleen, "on our mission in New York City." A white unicorn gracefully stepped forward and stood beside Kathleen. He lowered his head. "Dianthus," said Annie. "The wand of Dianthus helped you learn four secrets of happiness," said Merlin. "From Leonardo da Vinci, Basho the poet, the deep sea, and best of all, from this little one you brought me from Antarctica." The magicians picked up a baby penguin that had been hiding behind his cloak. "Penny," said Jack. "And four creative geniuses of history thank you too," said Morgan, "for helping them begin the path of giving their gifts to the world." "Mozart and Louis Armstrong," said Jack, remembering their friends, "and Lady Gregory and Charles Dickens." "And thank you for helping Teddy to undo the spell he accidentally cast on Penny," said Merlin. "He confessed all to us later." We went to the Taj Mahal in India for that," said Annie, "and met Saint Bernard dogs in Switzerland and Abraham Lincoln and pandas in China," said Jack. "And now you have returned from four more missions," said Merlin. "And you were successful, I presume?" "Yes," said Annie. "We learned secrets of the greatness by spending time with Alexander the Great and his black stallion, with the great Houdini and his wife, Bess, Florence Nightingale, and finally, said Jack, from Pele the Great. He held out the notebook paper on which he had written the 4 secrets of greatness. Let me show y'all this real quick before I finish reading that part. So, I don't know how much or if any of the Magic Treehouse books that you have read on your own or maybe at school with a teacher, but all these people and all these places they're talking about are all the books of the Magic Treehouse. And you notice they said 52 missions in 52 weeks. Well, look at what book this is. 52. 52. So it's kind of cool. If you are enjoying the Magic Treehouse books, I want to encourage you, especially if you're a second and third grader, maybe even first grader, to start back at the first. Find book number 1. It's about the dinosaurs before dark. And it starts there and they go through, and all the things they just talked about are what you would read in these books. And you would get to 52 and all those things, the 52 missions. So this is their 52nd mission that they're on. And this other book, I guess, that we're going to read is the 29th mission. So we're kind of going backwards, but it's okay. Because each book also is fun to read on its own, to learn about that specific person or time. So he says, and finally, said Jack, from Pele the Great, he held out the notebook paper on which he had written the 4 secrets of greatness. Merlin took the paper from Jack and read it in a deep, resonant voice. Humility, hard work, meaning and purpose, enthusiasm. Does that sound like Merlin? I don't know. I tried. The magician was silent for a moment. He seemed deep in thought. Then he looked back at Jack and Annie. Yes, he said. Perfect. Thank you, Jack and Annie, for your greatness. Jack and Annie both smiled and shrugged. We're not that great, said Jack. We're just 2 regular kids, said Annie. Really lucky, regular kids. On your journeys, you have learned many things, said Morgan. You have seen many parts of the world and met many remarkable people. Jack, you have become kinder and more courageous. Annie, you have become more thoughtful. Your next missions may be even more challenging, said Merlin. Really? Breathed Jack. How do we prepare for that? Do not worry, said Morgan. We want you to do what others your age do. Learn new things in school. Have fun with your family and friends. Read books. Play games outside, said Teddy. Play music. Play with animals, added Kathleen. Jack and Annie smiled. Goodbye, Jack and Annie, said Merlin. For now, said Morgan. The candle flames danced wildly in the gentle breeze, and the golden light bells rang through the air. Sweet music filled the forest with the sounds of flutes and horns. The wind began to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still, absolutely still. The pale gold light of dawn shone through the window of the treehouse. Jack and Annie were back in the woods of Frog Creek, and their clothes were clean. No time at all had passed in Frog Creek. Did all that just happen? Said Jack, dazed. All what? Said Annie. Thousands of candles in the woods. King Arthur and Queen Guinevere, Merlin, Morgan, Teddy, Kathleen, all that, said Jack. I think, said Annie. Amazing, said Jack. I wonder what our next mission will be. I hope we find out soon, said Annie. Yep, said Jack. Let's go home. He pulled on his backpack and started down the rope ladder. Annie followed him. They stepped onto the ground and started through the summer woods. Neither spoke as they walked under the trees, through patches of shadow and light. Finally, Jack broke the silence. I think I'll buy a soccer goal with my birthday money, he said, and set it up in the backyard. Good idea, said Annie. And let's email Jenny and Randy and Quinn and see if they want to practice with us. Yeah, and Will and Lolly and Griffin, said Jack. And I want to pick up some books at the library, too. Check out some exciting ones with big adventures and interesting information. Cool, said Annie. Okay, so I guess that is what we'll do today, said Jack. Breakfast, bike to the library and the sports shop, home for lunch, practice soccer, eat dinner, and read before bed. Sounds like a good plan, said Annie. A perfect one, said Jack. And they quickened their steps as they left the Frog Creek woods and headed for home. The end. Oh, this is so cool. Here's Pele. Here's a picture of Pele, the real guy. And it says, enthusiasm is everything. It must be taut and vibrating like a guitar string. That's his quote. You see the little quotation marks here? So that's how you know that he said that. That was actually said. Pele actually said that. All right. So, wow. That was really a cool book. Every time I read one of these books, I think, okay, that was my favorite one. That's my new favorite one. She just can't get any better. But my goodness gracious, how neat to have 52 books read, and then at the end they go to Camelot and they highlight each of those books. I've read a lot of those books, probably about 4 years ago. If you were a bullfrog from 4 years ago, I'm sure you're probably not watching because, let's see, you would be in like 6th or 7th grade now. But if you were a bullfrog 4 years ago, y'all know we got to like book, it was in the high 30s or low 40s. So we started with book 1 at the beginning of that school year, and we read all the way until like book 30 or 40 something. And that's why I started this channel in the first place, because those bullfrogs were so special and they loved the Magic Treehouse series like I did. And then we were sad. We actually were really sad when it was summertime and we had to leave and we couldn't finish the series. And so that was my goal, was to try to finish the series. And I actually haven't been able to finish that goal. I realized that. So, gives me an idea. Maybe I need to start back from book 1 on this channel and let all of you experience all the books. They're awesome. Okay, so at the end, there's an author's note. Remember, when you're finished reading a book and it's such an amazing story, sometimes it's hard to put that book down because you're like, man, I was there. I was in Mexico City with Pele the Great and Jack and Annie. So I love to read sometimes the author's notes. And as always, there's always the fact tracker books along with all of this. And, oh, this is interesting. At the end, for you girls, Mia Hamm. She's a very famous and popular girls soccer player. It talks about Mia Hamm. She was born in 1972. She had a foot problem as a child. She had to have operations. Anyway, there's a really neat little page-and-a-half thing about her. So, yeah, really cool. Yay, we finished our book. Oops, sorry, I took the cover off. We finished our book. I am so excited that you read with me. And if you haven't finished reading these, I want you to catch up, because now we're going to start reading A Big Day for Baseball. Baseball is kind of a big deal here in Texas. And so this story is about Jackie Robinson. And I've actually seen a movie about this guy, so I'm excited to read this book. And that's what we will do next time. And as always, I try to read every day, but sometimes I don't get to it. So I'm going to go ahead and record extra books, picture books, so you can have something to read at least one of those days that I'm not able to read. But I'm going to try to pre-record quite a few today. So thank you so much for reading with me, and I hope you enjoyed today. It was kind of long. 43 minutes we've been on here. But wow, what a great book. All right, talk to y'all soon. So proud of y'all for reading with me. Bye.